Then you have what's called the doer. The doer, they go hard in opportunity because they know that it could be something great. And they go hard because they know that when the opposition comes up, they're going to tackle it. They bring themselves to the problem, and there's confidence within that. So for a lot of people, if you're a person that's slow, you need to tackle more opportunity. You need to basically go after more, more opposition, tackle it hard. If you're a person that's the defender, you need to go seek out new things that could make you look bad, but damn it, you can be better. If you're a dabbler, you need to stay the course. Something goes wrong, don't shut down. Rear your head, pick up, and go to work. And if you're a doer, keep doing. There's different levels to that, but you got to keep doing. So that's where somebody starts if they're in that place. Figure out where you're starting from, and then you can chart that GPS path to where you want to go.
What's up, everyone? And I'm super excited to have today's guest. Today's guest is Anthony Trucks. Anthony's story is one of the most awe-inspiring stories of grit, perseverance, determination, love, and focus that I have ever heard. It all started for Anthony at the age of 3, in which his single mother gave him and his 3 siblings up to foster care, where he endured hell. Hell included beating, starvation, and forms of torture, all before the age of 6. Finally, at the age of 14 years old, he was adopted into a lovely yet poor family. It was there, though, that Anthony finally got to experience love, caring, and being part of a family. From there, Anthony went on to become a football star, attended the University of Oregon, and then was drafted into the NFL. However, life was much more convoluted during these times than what is seen on the surface. Simultaneously, Anthony became a teen parent, married his high school sweetheart, met his biological father at the age of 21, had his NFL career cut short by an injury, had twins at 25 in an unstable marriage, found out his wife was having an affair and got divorced, lost his adopted parents, contemplated suicide, remarried his ex-wife, and eventually dove into new career ventures. Throughout all of this seemingly chaotic times, Anthony lost his identity. He lost who he was. It wasn't until he asked himself a fundamental question of, who am I, that he began to turn his life around. Once he discovered his life's mission, he set off to achieve one thing, and that's to improve the lives of others. That's when he created Modified Entity, which is a company with one focus: to help others take back control of our lives throughout the modifications of our identity through life's expected and unexpected shifts. And Anthony has obviously had a ton of both expected, but mostly unexpected shifts. Upon discovering himself and finding some of the answers to who he is, Anthony's entire existence changed. He went on to become a ninja warrior, which is super cool if you don't know the show, American Ninja Warrior, a best-selling author, a 7-figure gym coach, a 6-figure consultant, an international keynote speaker, best-selling author, and best of all, and I know most important to him, a father of 3 beautiful children. Without further ado, Anthony, I really appreciate you being here with us, and it is really an honor to have you on here as someone who really shares the passion to help others discover who they are, the fundamental question. So thank you so much for being here, Anthony.
Hey, man, I appreciate you having me on. That's a hell of a story, huh, man? Every time I hear it, I'm like, wow, that's really my life.
That is crazy,
Yeah,
because I've gone
crazy.
through a lot of bullying in my life and so forth and so on, but you had so many different circumstances thrown at you, and I feel like it could have been really easy for you to keep on going down the spiraling path instead of you turning your life around. And where I really want to start the story is, what was it like going through what you went through at such an early age? And then how did you come to a point where you said, okay, now I have to turn it around? Because I think that's so crucial for people to understand.
Yeah, it's man, I don't know if it was anything where I wanted to serve other people till I was like early 30s, to be honest. It wasn't something where growing up I was like, I'm gonna do this for other people. I mean, to be honest, the big piece of me navigating stuff and just trying to figure it out was just sheer survival. I think a lot of people they don't see that part of them as being something that's actually useful, but survival is useful, man. You develop tools and skill sets that you typically wouldn't have or wouldn't be forced to have. And so for me, I think a lot of the things early on were just going through those times and simply living, like surviving them. And it wasn't until I was later in life that I really realized, like, man, I've got to change something, because what most people don't grasp, like, that's a story that most people can listen to and say, man, I don't get much out of that. That's somebody's crazy story. Like, cool story, bro. Now what, right? And what I've come to find is that the story isn't supposed to be something you take point for point, but you see the workings within it. There was a point in time where I realized that my programming as a kid was not serving me, because I look at us all kind of like, you're on a computer, I'm on a computer. We have the software running it. And when the software starts bogging, everything program-wise slows down. The Zoom was messing up, right? Because had too much stuff going on, and there's, the software could have been outdated. And so what they do is we upgrade it, and all of a sudden it runs smoother. And in life, it's the same thing. We just don't realize that the programming that's bogging us down, it was unintentionally programmed into us well before we were aware of it. 15, 16 years old, it was in. So what you think about money, what you think about relationships, you think about opportunity, possibility, like, it's in there. It's really hard to adjust that. And so for me, over the years, I got to the point of, like, looking back at life and saying, wow, like, I've got to change some things. I had to go look at the programming and adjust those, because then I could operate at a different level. And that's really what adjusted my life.
So, Anthony, talk to me a little bit about the process of how a person can actually go about discovering who they are. Because, like I said, I think that is the fundamental question that
Yeah.
all of us should ask ourselves from an early age. Because, like we were saying before we hopped on, the earlier you could figure that out, the
Better.
less time you're going to waste, and you definitely will have less regrets. But you'll
Yeah.
also be able to achieve a lot more in life than compared
Mhm.
to if you were 50 years old and then you started asking that question. But how do I actually start that process?
Yeah, well, there's a lot. I mean, identity is kind of what I work in, because it's who you are, right? How do I find out who I am? And there's actually ways through frameworks. There's a framework I created called the slow or go identity, and that's actually one I can easily break down and give somebody a chance to be like, oh, that's who I am, or that's who I am, and then how do I adjust that, right? So the first thing is, you got to kind of be honest with yourself and start taking a look, asking questions, or having somebody ask you the questions and learn from them. But the thing that slow or go does says, in life we always have these opportunities and we have oppositions, just the nature of it. And what happens is, throughout life, when we're faced with these, in the moment of them, we do certain things, whether we push forward or we shut down or we complain, right? If there's an opportunity, you either go slow or you go. Or if there's opposition, you go slow or you go. But they always meet together. So what I look at is, there's certain people who, in opportunity, they go slow, which means they let it pass them by. Like, I'm too scared of this. I'm fearful. What if it goes wrong? The opportunity passes them. And then also, when opposition rears its head, they don't know how to tackle it. So they kind of steer clear, they create excuses, they don't face it head on. So this person was called a slow go, or a dreamer identity. The dreamer identity is someone who dreams a lot of stuff, but they can't really put it into action and create anything, because they're too scared of failing and they don't know how to overcome obstacles. Then you have what's called a slow go, which is slow in opportunity, but they go hard in opposition. So these are the kind of people that, what they do is, they'll see something, and they won't attach or try something new, because they don't want to diminish the identity they already have. They're called defenders. So this means that I've already, I'm the heavyweight boxer who's undefeated, or I've always got straight A's, or whatever it is. I got this thing that I've created. I built this business, and I don't want to take on anything new, because what if it makes me look bad when I feel this good? So people miss out on opportunities. They don't chase stuff, but they will, however, defend their position. If they've built this, I'm defending it. You don't get to come take this from me. This is who I am, and they'll rear their head, right? And societally, it's anybody that's done a lot to build a position, but doesn't want to admit that there's something wrong or could be better, so they defend it, and their ego rears up. Right now in society, a lot of police officers are doing this. And my best friend's a white police officer, and I love policing. I mean, they do a great job. A lot of my family members are. But there's this interesting piece going on where there is this protective, like, I'm a great cop, I've done this good stuff. And they'll defend that, but there's not this thing that will go in and say, but can I be better? Like, they won't do that yet, right? So there's a defender. Then you have, on the flip side, this what's called a dabbler, someone who goes an opportunity, but goes slow in opposition. So what they like to do is, they go and see an opportunity, and I go really hard and fast towards it. I'm going in, I'm tackling, I'm seeing the new thing, I'm going hard, right? But in the moment something pops up, I shut down. I don't pursue anything more. I make great excuses so I have to feel the pain of it, and I move on to the next thing, and then I chase shiny objects. I'm dabbling in different parts of life. So that's one person who has to be honest and say, man, I need to do something different. Then you have what's called the doer. The doer, they go hard in opportunity, because they know that it could be something great, and they go hard because they know that when the opposition comes up, they're going to tackle it. They bring themselves to the problem, and there's confidence within that. So for a lot of people, if you're a person that's slow, you need to tackle more opportunity. You need to basically go after more, more opposition, tackle it hard. If you're a person that's the defender, you need to go seek out new things that could make you look bad, but damn it, you can be better. If you're a dabbler, you need to stay the course. If something goes wrong, don't shut down. Rear your head, pick up, and go to work. And if you're a doer, keep doing. There's different levels to that, but you got to keep doing. So that's where somebody starts if they're in that place. Figure out where you're starting from, and then you can chart that GPS path to where you want to go.
So Anthony, in college, for example, I really want to get your take on this because I think it's an interesting point to make. The idea of such grandiose or big goals scares off a lot of people. I'll give you a for instance. So in high school, I was rejected from 10 out of 12 colleges. I had average SAT scores. I was ranked like 60th in my class at a certain point. I was ridiculed by other people. Then once I came to college, I set a big goal. I was like, I want to graduate with getting nothing less than an A. Mm-hmm. And I was able to believe that, perceive it, and then go out and pursue that and achieve it. But when I would tell other people that, they would be like, that's not possible. So how does one get to a point? Because, it included 54 classes. One would think you're going to slip up in one. But for me, it was like I never had an option but to achieve my goal. Yeah. Well, how does one get to that point from your perspective on to believe that you can even achieve something that is considered hard, big, or, unfathomable to most people?
Well, they look at the end destination and the place they're at, and immediately just in reflection, it's like, that's not who I am right now. I can't do that. So they're already setting themselves up for failure because they're looking at the destination in comparison to the starting point. So I don't look at that. Whenever I get to that point of what you're saying, I take a look at like, what are the things that I got to do daily that if I just do that every day, then over time, I'll wear it down and I'll get to that end result. So that's the first thing I look at is what's the daily thing? Do I got to read more? Do I got to spend more time not doing video games? Do I got to, take better care of my body? What are those things that can be done on a daily basis? And I can look and say, well, if I just do those things for 4 hours a day, this end result will happen. I can't focus on that. Like it'll take place, but the catalyst, if I flip this switch, that light turns on. So I just got to work on flipping the switch every day, right? So I got to work on the light will turn on. That's the first part of it. Second part is the deeper you get into it, the easier it becomes, right? It's this, it's like a flywheel concept. I spin the flywheel, the more momentum it gets, the harder it is to stop this thing in the first place. But also, from an identity standpoint, what we create creates us. The process of creation is very ugly and arduous, and it's just tedious, it's hard, it sucks. But when you've gone through the process of creating, at the end of it, it's who you are to do this thing. So by a certain amount of time, like you think about it, in the beginning, it's like it's difficult, it's painful, it's because it's not who you are yet. But then what happens, you get to the point where it's not only easy, but it's like you don't even think about it, but it gets done. And other people go up and say, how in the world do you do this? Because that's just not who they are yet. Whereas for you, it's like, it's just who I am. I just do these things. You're tuned for that. In fact, your identity is now that, the person who does those things, and they're easy. But you don't get there unless you've started the process of creation. Because now what happens is you're not just doing these things because they're easy. You're in fact protecting your identity. You're protecting the person you've created by taking the actions in consistency with who you are right now. And people, I wish I could say, you just wake up one day and believe you can do it, believe, right? It's unrealistic because part of your brain's still going to be like, yeah, no. And you'll be at odds with your own brain. You can try to force your brain to different things. And it sometimes can work to an extent for an amount of time, but I need to accomplish this thing. And then I'm like, oh, wait, well, yeah, that is who you are. It's no longer a belief. It's like, this is who I am kind of thing. That's the game changer for people. If they can start the process that way, it'll change anything they want in their life.
Right. And I think that's so true. And I can relate to that on a personal level. And I love how you put like a greater context on these things than most people do in our culture, because these are things that are just brushed over, especially our identity. And the point I want to get at is that, like I was telling you earlier, was society. And look at social media, for example. I took a class in college and it was called Persuasion. And there's a thing in persuasion called the hyperreal. I don't know if you ever heard of the hyperreal, but the hyperreal, imagine Disneyland. Disneyland looks perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a depiction of a lot of people's lives on social media, that it is just perfect. There's nothing going on in each
Happiest place
individual
on earth.
story. But I've never asked anybody this question on the show before, but what is your take on how important the narrative that we tell ourselves about ourselves is in correlation to the results that we get?
It's a massive piece. It's huge. So we have what's called like there's 6 core identity drivers, and these things are rooted in us and how we operate daily without even knowing they're operating. And it's beliefs, thoughts, actions, habits, mindset, and your ego or your pride. And what ends up happening is the thoughts you tell yourself, those are the things that drive the emotions that drive your actions. So if you're telling yourself one thing that's completely opposite of a belief or completely opposite of what you know to be true, you're going to be in this inability to actually push hard. So you get the imposter syndrome. I don't know if I should do that. I don't know if I'm the right person for that, because you're talking to yourself, telling yourself, "What are you doing going out there and doing that? You know you haven't done that yet, right?" It's like this thing, and so your brain's telling you this, and so we have this disconnect. It's very difficult for a lot of people. The conversation internally has got to be one that is. It's like your happy mom or your happy dad or your awesome aunt or uncle that would tell you amazing things. That's the voice that we need to pop into our head, because what's crazy is once you start telling yourself these stories, we as people, we like to live in a way to make our stories right. We just do. If we want to say that, it's easy to drive a car, well, then you'll find a way to make it easy to drive a car. If it's difficult to mow the lawn, well, then you'll find a way to make it difficult to mow the lawn. You'll live your life in a way to make it right. So if I tell myself I'm going to get straight A's, I'm going to do that all through college. I'm going to get straight A's. Well, sure enough, you're going to live in a way to make that right. So it is heavily the conversation, because whatever you tell yourself will try to find a way to make that right.
So then, to balance off of that idea about the conversation we have with ourselves, how important is our friend group that we surround ourselves with? Because I found myself in college, and this is my take on it. I found myself a lot of the time in times of surrounded by nobody but myself. And the reason for that was that I felt as if some or most people didn't have the same focus or drive that I did to achieve whatever it is that I wanted to achieve. And I knew that we all know the quote, some of the 5 people, we surround ourselves with is the result of who we are, essentially.
Yeah.
So then I found myself a lot of the time alone, but I valued that alone time, because it was in that alone time that I got a chance to step away from the craziness of life. And I got to reflect on my values, my principles, my morals, who I was. And in society, I feel like alone time is not valued enough.
Mm-hmm.
However, I do wish that I was able to find a group of, 3, 4, 5 people who were committed to, personal development, self-growth, and things of that line, along those lines. I had plenty of acquaintances, guys and girls say hello, what's up, have lunch here or there with them, but nobody that was that core group of people. So how important to you is it to find that core group of people who, make you feel a little uncomfortable, push you to go out of your comfort zone to get better, wake you up when you got to go work out, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, the thing is, you dabbled into one area, which is the sense of self. So some people, they don't like who they are inside, and they may not verbalize it in those specific clean words, but they just, if they're really to sit back, they don't like who they are. They drink too much, they party too much, they don't take care of things, they're falling short of their potential, they're making some people not so proud of their actions. So what happens is people, they don't like to be alone in their head with them, so they have to go and be around people that that make them distracted from that person they are internally, right? And then you're asking about the core group, and I think this is interesting because there is a definitive, like, as I think a quote I read the other day, it says, if you're around 5 billionaires will be the 6th. If you're around 5 millionaires, you'll be the 6th. If you're around 5 healthy people, you'll be the 6th. If you're around 5 great parents, you'll be the 6th. If you're around 5 idiots, you'll be the 6th. Right? So you're gonna be the average, but here's what it is you will raise to the expectations of your peer groups. This is it. We are humans built on acceptance. So I think this ties in the personal acceptance and the group acceptance. We want acceptance. So what happens is if we don't accept us, we want other people to try to accept us because we can feel better if those people accept us. So our relationships, some people, get in a relationship and try to get the other person to give them validation. Like, that's not going to happen. There's only enough joy in one person to give enough for one person, right? You can't give you my joy and then still have something for me. So what happens is people get to this point of the peer group they choose to be in is the peer group that will accept the them that they won't accept just yet. And so now I'm surrounded by a bunch of people, and the expectations of that peer group are, to be a drunk, to party, to, sleep around. That's the expectation of the peer group. So I want to be accepted. They accept me. I'm going to raise my expectations to their expectations. I do dumb stuff with them. But if you're around people who, here's the thing, if you go in a higher caliber human group and you're operating like that person who won't touch base themselves, they'll all call you on it. So here's where your answer comes in as to why it's important. Because I've been in groups where like I go and like I'm just, service level, but they know it and they can sense it because they've been me, right? And they'll call it and they'll force you to have to go check in and get to know you and who you are and how you operate. But then now you come back to that group and now your expectations are at the level of that peer group. If their expectation is, hey, we all exercise, we all say hi to our parents every day, we all love our wife, because there's groups that'll make fun of their wives and some love their wives. Like I'm in groups that like we praise our wives, we love them, right? I'm not the one that's going to be like, oh, my ball and chain. Like I love my wife, right? Different conversation. But people are going to raise my expectations, or they're not going to be around me. If they're not around me, they don't get what I get. And usually if you think about the peer group, you want people that have attained things or trying to attain things that you want, because now you're forced to accept you love you, and they accept that person and they call that person to greater greatness.
So then, Anthony, how do I or any other person that is young reach out or make an attempt to start to build that network? Because we're always told in college, you got to network, you got to grow your circle, you got to do this, you got to do that. But from your perspective, how do you not only grow your network, because I think sometimes that's fabricated, because it's like you're only trying to get something out of the other person, but how do you actually grow a meaningful relationship with somebody that can, potentially help you, but you do it for the sake of building? Right.
Yeah, you just tell them that's the case. Like, here's the thing. I think human connection is one thing that few people grasp. Is still a necessary thing for humanity. We're built this way. We're built for relation. The question is interesting. Like, how do I reach out to people? You just reach out to people. It's like, you're not going to go to the store and say, how do I order this food? Like, no, I just place my order and then I pay you money. Like, it's that simple. The scary part is reaching out. Some people are deathly afraid of my inbox because they think I'm going to say no. Right. So the idea is like, that's the action you take though. Get the no, you'll eventually get a yes. So it starts that way. And then what you're doing is first find the people that you connect with, that naturally connect, not the ones who are just successful in a place you want to be. So you just reach out to them, because like, find people you like. Because when you like a certain person, there's a reason, and that person might like you, and they may help you network and connect. And then reach out for a conversation. I know some people are like, hey, reach out to a person and ask to provide insight and help. And at a certain level, that is the case. So if you want to reach a certain tier of human, you got to reach out and try to be around their ecosystem, provide help and insight to eventually possibly get that conversation. But not everybody's at that level. Sometimes it's just having a reach out, like, hey, can I, carve out 15 minutes and just have a quick chat, get to know you real quick. Sure. Like I have time in my calendar set aside for that. So I'm like, here's my day that I do that. I've got, an hour and I got 4 spots in the hour. Like we could chat, right? So, but you do that and not enough people take me up on that. I don't tout that because that'd be a inundation of things, but there is an area where like people just need to do the reach out and get shunned and get told you're not great and get told no one wants to talk to you. Like do that, then find out how to get better and keep reaching out. And in doing so, the people will talk to you. Some will get some feedback. It's this marathon of a consistent process of planting seeds and watering them and planting them and watering them. And there's a drought, but you still water it. You keep doing it. And lo and behold, all of a sudden you have this amazing forest of just connections and life. And people are like, how did you do that? It's kind of like that frog in a hot water. Like you start out and the water's cold, and then little by little it gets so warm that you don't even notice that it's who you are now. It's the same kind of stuff I go back to. It's staying in it long enough to eventually become the human being that just does those things that before you were stressed off of.
Right. A lot of it. So in really going through and sticking through the process. And I think one of the biggest parts that people fail, that the reasons why they fail, is that they're afraid to fail in the first place. And I've had some of my friends in our discussions ask, how do you overcome the fear of failure? sometimes I
Mm.
could give a clear response, sometimes I can't. But from your experience, whether it be coaching, whether it be, just
Mm-hmm.
helping other people for the sake of helping other people, why are people afraid of failure? And then how do I overcome that fear of failure?
Yeah, they misclassify failure as the problem. We're afraid of it because it's real. Failure exists. It's not like it doesn't. But we always hear also, turn your failures into fuel, and there's lessons in, and there are, but people do not know how to extract them. So what happens is there's this black and white, like all failure is hard, it's difficult. I don't want to do it, but it's not black and white. There's actually a difference. There's 6 different levels of failure. And what happens when people don't understand those different levels, they're deathly afraid of taking action. I totally get it. Like, I don't want to do that because it's going to feel bad. But here's what happens. Your past has told you that failure was finite, and it's not. Never has it been. You placed it in the wrong classification. There's 6 of them. The top one is called abject failure. It's the end of the world. Nothing can come back. Somebody passed away. The pumpkin got smashed. Like, it's the end of it, right? And you pull no lessons usually from that. Nobody wants to. It just hurts so bad I walk away from it. This is, I'm not lovable. Relationship failed. No one can love me again. I walk away. I don't even look at what went wrong. Then you have what's called structural failure, which is a big, big piece that got messed up, but it's fixable. Really, really hard to do, but it could be fixed. Then you have what's called glorious failure. Smoke a cigarette, burn the ding down, watch it go, right? That's the glorious, like, whatever, walk away from this thing. Now, those 3, few people are able to go in and actually extract the lessons from them. Most people will just go in and say, this sucks. End of the world, structural, glorious, and I walk away and I'm done with this. But there's 3 more below that are the ones that change lives. One is pretty much what's called a common failure, which is, it's what the apology was made for. I bumped your tailgate, I hit you. I'm sorry, my bad, and I won't do that again. Quick lesson. That wasn't right. Let me not do that again. Simple, common failure. Then you have version failure. Version is like, all right, this version sucked. I put it out. I did the best I could, but the information came back and let me know that version 1.0 wasn't good enough. Let me make version 2.0 and 3.0 and then iPhone 11, right? So it's just versions. And then you have the bottom, which is called predictable. For me, going into sports as an athlete, every day at practice was predictable failure. I knew something was going to get wrong. I was going to get yelled at every day. It's what a coach is for, right? That's all it is. So what happens is people have instances in life, or have had them, and what they do is they place them, all of them, in the area of glorious, structural, or abject. They don't even think that it could have been a version of them, or even think that it could have been something that could have been predicted, because that's just too much in the ego sometimes. Or that it could be like, my bad, I messed up kind of thing. They beat themselves up. It's abject failure. I pull no lessons. Therefore, I go into my life thinking every failure is an end all and I cannot be any better. So I don't want to see failure again because it's the end of the world. So what I do is work with people through the concept of like, hey, let's repurpose this failure. Let's reframe it and put it in a different category. Because if you can recategorize it, then you can actually learn from it and go, okay, well, in my relationship, that version of me sucked. I was selfish. I didn't communicate. I didn't listen. I didn't love, so that version of Anthony sucked. That's why the relationship went down. So let me go try again, as opposed to I'm not lovable, right? There's a difference. Same thing for predictable. Like for me in business, when I went in, I was like, it's all going to work perfect. And you realize like, no, that's not how business works. It's almost like it should be predictable for business every day. Something's going to go wrong. But if you are in the position of like, when it goes wrong, I'll fix it because I'll learn from it. Now things get better. So it's somebody like you're saying who's in that place of like, man, failure is scary. And I have this massive fear of it. Yes, you should. That's scary, right? But not all failure is the boogeyman or the devil. Some failures are supposed to be there to prop us up for a future we want.
Yeah, that's something that I practice personally. And from experience, like you're saying, that's something that I've learned, from my childhood, experiencing a lot of bullying and what a lot of people would deem to be failure. But now that I look back, it was like, that was some of the most beautiful times that I ever had that have enabled me to be where I am today and do what I do and become the person that I've become.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things and one of the reasons why I admire you so much, and you are one of the best storytellers and speakers that I've heard
Thank you.
on social media, YouTube, whatever the case may be. I was telling my girlfriend the other day, I was like, you got to watch this guy because he can speak. A lot of people are afraid of public speaking.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for not only public speaking, but I do want you to touch on that, but
Mhm.
communication in general, because I think that's a lost art, like you were saying earlier.
Yeah, it is. That's one, people aren't in practice. They're in practice of messaging on their phone nowadays. Like, I like to talk to people. I like to send voice messages. I like to prefer to do it that way. One is, it's a skill you got to learn, right? So there's a great book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Covey, and that was one of the better books for me to learn communication. Like, seek first, understand, then be understood, right? Start with the end in mind, and then I can discuss those conversational points. And so what happens is, first I have to realize that a communication, a back and forth, it's a back and forth. It's not just me talking, right? I can talk and it's great, but then I can't listen. So I can't learn, right? So speaking to me came from a stance of, like, I want to make sure that I'm first understanding what somebody is going through. So that when I talk to them, I'm talking to them from a place where they'll absorb it, because they'll understand that I understand them, so they'll listen to me. So that was the first piece of it. Secondly, it was practice. And so what I did to learn how to do it, it's called extemporaneously. Like, right now, I am just talking to you off the cuff. I'm teaching you, telling you, talking, and I don't have anything prepared, right? There's no ums and there's no ahs. It's just me in flow. So what ends up happening is you have to go through practice. So I did this thing where every night for 1,333 days, I did a nightly 90-second video. Nightly 90, 3.65 years. And what I did was, I wanted to condition myself to take any topic and turn it into a life lesson. Anything in the room. We'd have people pick, boogers off the floor, and we could make a lesson out of it. I just grabbed an idea and I would hit record and I would go. I put myself in a position to mess up, to fail. And every day that I did it, I did fail. Something could have been better, or something went wrong. But in doing so, I was consistently refining this skill of being able to think and process and talk. And a lot of people want to wait until they're ready to do something before they do it. But the truth is like, I heard somebody say recently, ready is a lie. Angie Lee says, ready is a lie. And it is, because there's never a ready moment. You just make your moments and then you build up over time. So for speaking, it was practice. It was understanding what communication is, how to engage, interact, what words hold power and how to use them, and then just practicing it until it becomes normalcy to me. So at this point, I just do this and I don't even think about it. It's just normalcy. It was not always this way, though.
Right. Robin Sharma, who's like a profound author. I'm sure
I
you've
like
you've
him a
heard of
lot.
him.
Yeah, met him before. He's a
Says
good guy.
what'd you say?
He's a good guy. He's a tiny little guy. He's a good dude. Matter of fact, he heard me speak one time. He's like, "You're going to do great things in this industry." I met him at Santa Clara a few years back.
Yeah, and through my experiences reading his work, one of my favorite things that he said is that the easiest way to build willpower is to intentionally place yourself in positions of discomfort. And for
Mhm.
those 3.65 years, that's what you kind of did, because it sounds like you weren't always a person that just able to pick up a microphone, go on stage, and you turn on the lights. And now you were Anthony Trucks, who's on stage, talking to thousands of people, blowing their minds away. You weren't always that guy.
No.
So, and you were a professional athlete, American Ninja Warrior. And to get to a level in which you are professional at, you have to have a certain relationship with discomfort and
Mhm.
pain that it becomes your friend. And
Yeah,
for
it's
me,
fun.
right, for me, it was my experience. And so I'm an ultra endurance athlete. I've run multiple ultra marathons, and my
Mhm.
experience with that pain is that I experienced the pain, but the person that I became in the process was so much greater than the pain that I experienced along the way.
Yeah,
So, what has your experience been with dealing with whether it be emotional pain, physical pain, or just
yeah.
discomfort in general?
I always hear a statement of, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? It's all quippy and it sounds good. And I think people butcher it. They miss out on exactly what it's really saying, because the secret, like the answer you're asking for, lies in this. And so when I think of comfortable being uncomfortable, people think of being okay being uncomfortable. Like, just settle with it. Just be okay with it being uncomfortable, right? And that's not where champions are made. It's just not. There's that whole, like, who said, I think, maybe it's Muhammad Ali or somebody said, like, I don't even start counting until it burns and it hurts. And so what happens is, comfort, if you think about the actual comfortable, it's not okay. It's like, it's cozy. It's like, when I think of comfortable, I think of, like, it's a winter day. I got my blanket out, I got my cozy little slippers on, fire. I got some hot chocolate. I got my family. I'm on the couch. I got a cool movie I haven't seen on. Like, it's just, oof. The feeling of comfort is palpable. I can taste it. That's the level of comfort you have to have with discomfort. Because when you do that, here's the thing is the dream that everybody wants, millions of other people want the same dream. They just do. The things it will take to get that dream are so uncomfortable to most people, they'll never have it. Drake says there's more people that want it than people that got it. That's just the reality of it. So when I sit here and look at people and they talk about get comfortable, be uncomfortable, how do you have the relationship? It's like I said a moment ago, it's fun. I have a weird enjoyment in discomfort because I get to solve a puzzle, and I love puzzles. I love. I'm holding this little cube right here. It's an infinity cube because I just like fiddling with things and solving problems. In my world of what I do, I'm a problem solver. Now, most men are. Women don't like it in relationships, but like I'm a guy that tries to solve problems. So whenever I see something, I have this thing I call a 7-second rule, and something comes across my plate. Happens daily. Happened today. Happens daily. And I sit and I'm like, oh, this sucks. And I give myself quite literally 7 seconds to sit there and like, all right, man, it sucks. Oof, really? All right, let's figure it out. And I go. And like, I'm like, because here's the thing is when I switch my brain to the point of trying to find a solution, I got you. Don't worry about it. I go and try to find a solution before I find an excuse. I succeed. So I got my video dropped, but I can still hear you. Don't worry about it. But that's kind of the big deal for me is trying to get people to wrap around that aspect of it's more so for me an exercise in trying to figure out how exactly I can find that solution before I find an excuse and quit.
Right. So, wow, that's definitely powerful, and I would imagine that that played an important role in you becoming a professional athlete because that in and of itself is something that very few people do. And I've been around a lot, not a lot, but I've been around some professional athletes that I went to high school with and so forth. And like you're saying, that relationship is just different. Now I kind of want to switch the conversation a little bit because you have a pretty big social media following. I think you have 88,000 followers on Instagram. Obviously I'm one of those, but what advice could you give someone that wants to share their story with others, similar to what you do?
Yeah.
But how do they build that brand in the first place if they're not in the position that you are? For example,
Yeah.
I'm a 22-year-old, right? And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the stuff that you discuss, I share the same feelings towards, but obviously we
Sentiments. Yeah.
have different experiences, so I can't talk about it the same way that you can. But as someone that is
Yeah.
just wanting to start sharing their story on
Yeah.
Instagram, how does someone go about building that brand?
I think it comes back to the fear of failure and the comfortable and the uncomfortable, right? So when I started, I didn't have any followers. Like the Nightly 90 grew. I went from like 0 Facebook followers, like 251,000 followers on Facebook by doing live streams in Nightly 90s, man. It was just a matter of carving through the rock. Because what happens is along the journey, you have a lot of people who will give you flack for what you do. I had a guy last night on my Instagram messaging back and forth of like, is this just all these motivational speakers that are trying to hustle people? I see your hustle in your game. It's like, no, this is really work that I do. I legitimately see people make more money in their businesses and fix their marriages and be at peace. Like, it's not a hustle. Like, it's something I love to do because I see it work, right? But that's part of my journey. You're going to have that. It's going to get worse for me as I climb and do more. So when someone's trying to say, how do I share my message? You just share your message and you listen to the people you're sharing it with. They're going to tell you what they like, what they dislike, what makes sense, what problems they have. I think one of the things, if you listen to our just talk today, like I've given you processes, the 6 core drivers, I've given you the slower go identity. All that was me doing stuff, having information go out, people give me information back, listen to their problems and say, where's the answer to that question I have? I do thinking time. I sit down for an hour twice a week and I just think. And I'm trying to think, what are the questions that have been posed to me? And what's a solution I could actually create, not just talk about, right? So people ask questions on certain stuff and I'll give them an answer real quick. But then I'm like, what if I put that into a framework or a box that I can teach and it's simple for somebody, right? That takes time and energy. And that's something that people have to do is when you share your story, the story is not it's not your story, it's the world's, but it's your experience, and you create value from it by extracting the point that I should have extracted and teaching it to me so that I can apply it to my life and be better. So when you're telling your story, it's a lot of stories out there. Like my story is a difficult one, but I don't live in my story all day. I live in other people's worlds. Here's what I experienced. This is why I am validated and why I'm good at what I do, we'll call it. Here's the previous clients I've worked with and the success I've got them. But here's what I want to give to you so your life can be better. Because you don't come to my social media for me. You come for what I'm giving to you. And that's what I think most people aren't realizing is when you're going and telling your story, it's not about you. It's weird. In the very beginning, when I did it, when I started speaking, I just started telling my story. And then I had one of my agents say, look, your story's good. No one cares about you. I was like, what do you mean? She's like, they care about them. So what can you pull from your story to give to them so their story can be better? And I was like, okay. So since then I've been tuned to like, I'll tell my story, but I'm going to give you insight in between it as to how it's making you better, because that's what somebody wants. And now I get to do what I want to do, which is provide value to people. And unfortunately, there's not always a ton of value and life-changing value just in a story. You got to go beyond it.
Yeah, I could honestly say I've never thought about it in those terms, but that is genius in and of itself that she told you that nobody cares about you. I think
Yeah.
that is some of the best piece of advice that I've gotten on this show thus far. And I think that's going to help a lot of people to build a framework around your experience. And that is
Yeah.
awesome. So I really thank you for that. The
Welcome.
last thing that I really want to discuss, and I was just looking on your website not too long ago, and I think it was an article by Forbes or Inc. But it talked about legacy.
Yeah.
And,
Joe DeSena.
7 habits of highly effective people. One of the chapters start with the end in mind. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, I went through an experience in which I lost my grandmother very suddenly, and she helped raise me, very close to her. And I was telling another guest about this experience, and although she died, and it was very sad, it was one of the greatest things that could have ever happened, because she lives through me.
Mm-hmm.
And she's enabled me to see that, Devin, time isn't something that you can just mess around with. You have to act urgently, because what I failed to mention to you is that she had asked me the week prior to her just having a heart attack if I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to sleep over her house. And I had told her no,
Mm-hmm.
thinking that I would have that opportunity again, but then that opportunity never came. But now it's like, okay, I have to act urgently because I don't know when the end will come. But
Mm-hmm.
then on top of that, it also made me think of who is the person that I want to be remembered as.
Yeah.
So how do you think about legacy, and how does legacy, impact your actions now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm literally always in my legacy. Like I'm sitting here having conversations with people, like entire day today. I've been 8 hours of just interviews. I don't get paid for this, but I show up and I have fun because I know there's a person that's going to hear this that I will never meet, but will be like, "That changed my life." That little statement, like I'm gonna go do. There's a seed that got planted. So that is part of my legacy. It's serving from a place of giving the world what I wish I was provided. Right. My mom passed away from MS, and it was something similar. It was difficult for me to like, man, like this woman that loved me past my crazy, she's gone, right? And 47 years old, and I was 30 at the time. I was like, I could be here for less than the amount of time I've already been here, and it already feels fast. So I can't sit around, right? So part of it is, as I'm in this process of urgency to create, I do want to serve with the life that I was gifted, even though it was difficult. But on the next level, it's like I want legacy wise my kids to be able to always and forever be like, that was my dad. Like that dude was great. He was honest, he was humble, he was caring, he worked hard, he loved me, he loved the world. Like I want them to sit back and be super proud that I was dad. And I think for me, the way that I show up in the world is an example of that, right? So I'm serving everybody through the work I do. And I've always wanted to have this weirdly large funeral, because I came into the world being given away. I didn't matter to anybody. Like my real mom. So if I didn't matter, like I want to go out of here mattering. So the way you do that is not by just creating some software product that makes a bunch of money. Like I do it by doing this. I get to hop on and chat with people and talk and answer questions that serve people's lives, to where when I'm all, decrepit old and it's all said and done, that some people come to see me off, and they'll see you off because you touch their life, not because you touch their pocketbook.
And Anthony, I really love that line about they'll come to the funeral because of who you are. And I was talking to somebody else about the movie Tuesdays with Morrie. Have you ever read the book or seen the movie?
I haven't yet,
So,
no.
basically it's about a student who went through university, and he had this professor, but once college ended, he went off to work and never got in contact with the professor again, until he came across an article that the professor had come down with want to say Alzheimer's or something like along those lines, but basically something that got progressively worse until the person eventually died. But so he decided, man, I got to reach back out to Professor. So every Tuesday he would go to the professor's house and have kind of an interview in which he would ask the professor a list of questions. And one of the Tuesdays that he went to his house, the professor said, I want to be able to attend my own funeral. So they had like a funeral, but he was actually there while everybody else was talking about him, sharing memories about him. He wanted to see the type of person that he was going to be remembered as. And I think that people are scared of death. And to one end, we kind of should be. I mean, because we never know when the end will come. But a lot of people don't utilize it to fuel them. So like they look at it as being morbid, like death is a morbid thing. But like what you were saying is beautiful, because the value that you give to others will leave a lasting impact. And I imagine if the world had that same mentality, that I want to think about my legacy before I start doing anything, before I start taking this job, does this align with who I am? I think the life would be such a more beautiful place with people who are fulfilled and happy. And by having you on, Anthony, I got a lot out of this, let me tell you personally. And I know my audience will as well. So I really want to thank you. Like you were saying earlier, I was shocked when you sent me a voice recording on Instagram. I was like, no way did this guy just send me. One of the only people to do that. But I like that now that you think about it. I love the psychology behind it. It shows people I care a little bit. So I really appreciate you doing that and then coming on here and taking an hour out of your day. So thank you very much, Truck Stop, for coming on the show. And I definitely look forward to speaking again. So thank you so much.
No problem, man. Thank you for having me. Seriously.
Thank you guys so much for listening to yet another episode of the One Life Podcast. I hope that you were able to take one or two of these ideas that we discussed today and are able to implement them in your life to make you more successful in whatever it is that you're chasing. Remember, only one life to live, no time to wait. Act now. See you guys on the next episode of the One Life Podcast.